This part here needs a little touch of detail, so we could do that. I'm going to, in fact, I've had enough of washes, so I think I will be going into just doing more of a dry brush thing. So let's talk about that. So, interestingly enough, I don't know when I started doing it. I do this thing. So I have my El Cheapo. This is a 6C white. I don't even know what that is. That this is just a cheap and nasty little beautiful brush from the stationery store. It's not even from an art store. It's a nylon brush, and so it has a lot of like real resistance and bounce, which I like. Some of your nice soft sable brushes, they don't quite, they don't, they, well, this one seems okay, but I just wouldn't feel right doing what I do to my brush using a sable brush because they're more expensive. So, for instance, this colour here, oh, it's reasonably light. It's probably too light for our purpose. Let's beef it up a bit. This is more interesting. A little bit darker. If I do this on my palette, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Now this brush could be one of the smaller, but it says it's a 6. I mean, it'd actually be more convenient if it was a 5 or a 4 for a smaller painting, because it splays out quite a lot. Now you can't really see too much. I need a little bit more water. What we're looking for is that magical part that is just enough wash, but not too much that it's too wet. See that they don't splay out quite the same. So this kind of almost starts the drying process as well. So that's a little bit better. And I can just see, I don't know if you can just see, but I can just see some lines of colour. If I do it on say a different colour, then you might see as well. Let's pick this one. And what surprises me is how dark your wash can be, but the lines aren't as dark. It's normally the case. Let's see. So that's what we're looking at, would be great, right? So that's kind of the things I like to see. I like to see some lines, different areas can miss a little bit. And you can go on forever. I mean, you can use this sort of dry brush. I'll show you when I start painting. It kind of, I mean, after all these lines, well, I've done several strokes, and you can still sort of get colour out of it. So you don't have to keep going back to your palette and putting on water or wash very much. And just I might go back just as I am to where I was working on the palette, just to smush it out a little, and see from there. There we need a little bit more. So that's I don't know how when I came up with that, but I did. It might have been my COVID technique. I really seem to start it this year. I'm not sure. But it's the lazy man's guide to getting lots of nice fine details without having to use a really fine brush and painting it. That's the only way. That's the reason I came up with it, right? Was to try and not have to sort of do all those really fine details with a fine brush that I wanted to achieve. So based on that, so that's what we're looking at, and that's your what you want to do and test and play with and get sort of right over time. Now, where do I want to start? So I want to start there, and let's see. I'm actually going to use a blue. This is just a really nice, it's either ultramarine or something similar. So it's sort of a nice real royal blue, you know, like a cooler blue, all those sorts of things. Now it's got a tiny bit of pink in it from my brush, I see, but if I do that, grab my paper, see what that looks like. Which is okay. And I'm going to start by doing the curves here of this part of the petal. And there is a sort of a really stronger pink through here, so I might drag it up a little bit to there, but I'm going to focus mostly on this point and come down and around. See, I mean, even now it's drying out in the sun because I'm chatting, but that should be okay because it's not completely dry. And if I'm really careful, what I love is if there's, you know, spaces missing and lines coming in and little gaps and things like that. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So I just sort of feather it over. I don't want to go over here too much because that is quite a soft pink sort of highlight, so we leave that for the moment and continue down. And this sort of really just starts developing the intensity really of colour. Now we can go over this highlight now a little. Well, it's not a highlight, it was just an area of paper. And I mean, now's the time where I start doing loads of, I don't paint straight with the brush, and that I might turn it over and just use a tip part that I know is there to sort of run something down, things like that. I'm going to start sort of working around with my brush a lot more. I'm going to just, as I said, just feather a little bit into the top, but I don't want it to be too much. If there's anything that sort of develops, that's a line, and then there's a gap, we like that because it lets the underlying colour show through. And there is some blue, there's quite a bit of blue through here, it's like so I might just take it all the way down. Some sort of a weird reflection. What it does do is it helps me introduce sort of a blue into there without putting a wash of colour in there. I'm putting these sort of tiny lines and things, so just I've got something in there. So as you see, I sort of turn my brush around. I might pick up a couple of different lines that have appeared, you know, that I put in that I want to emphasize and work with. I'm going to go over all this in magenta as well, but this is a bit of a nice shadowy area that we can sort of develop with a bit of blue. It's any excuse to get a bit of colour in your work, and I'll use it. I mean, that really is quite light. But weirdly, I mean, it looks like, oh, I'm not going to add anything onto the paper, but I do. By the time you put it on the paper, it's almost like, because there's additional colour on there, it seems to go on better. I'm not sure what's going on, but like I can definitely see it on the paper when I do it. And just crumb some of that colour up. I'm avoiding this part here because that's going to be a sort of a nice brighter pink glow. I'm just going to feather it. And if you do notice, it's sort of a little bit brighter there, so we may or may not do that. I might just take that down just a tiny bit in colour intensity and do the top. So it's sort of now, it's got a bit of pink in it, so now it's looking a bit more like a greyish blue, which is okay. See, this is where if you've got a slightly smaller one, see, it gets very wide. This is only because this is the only brush I've got like this. I must hunt around and see if I've got anything that's one size smaller. So I want to tap it in so it's just not quite as wide, because if I want to get up into this little small space, it can be, you know, wider than what you need. So it's quite good if you can just manage to grab yourself a couple of sizes so that you've got something that fits the space you need, rather than being a little too big. Really light colour on here now. Possibly, it's not nothing, but it's barely nothing. Okay, I'll just do like, see, it doesn't seem to even pick up, but you can just see little colour, so nothing strong. Because you can always build up, you can, and it looks better too. So that's the other thing. Don't, and this possibly is for Winnie. Don't expect to do one layer or 2 layers, and this is your patience, Winnie, and expect it to look good. It doesn't. It looks like rubbish still. It really takes a good few layers. And see, this looks better, but it'll look even better once we've done that all again another time, and maybe even a 3rd time, and then finally a 4th time. You know, it really does take layers to make things look, I don't know, it just gels it together. It just so much better. So the trick is to not be in a rush, to sort of just do a light layer of anything rather than a heavy layer, and because you're wanting to hurry up and get there to the finish, and just work on it that way. So see, I'm not even sure if I've got much colour on there at all, but it's almost like, I don't know, no, yeah, there is some. So if you press a little bit hard, you can see. And that's what we want. So we want some really nice, subtle, and subtle bits of colour. Now, you know what I might do now that we've seemed to be getting into this? I'm going to zoom in a bit more on the camera. So we'll keep with that same blue mix. Here. It's actually, if I look at it, it's quite a lot darker. So we'll start off with that blue, but we might get into something else once we've warmed up a little. Let's see. Now, there is a sort of it's not a highlight, actually we call it a low light in hair colouring, don't we? The dark part. I could just go over that very gently. I don't want to colour it too much. But we do need to introduce a little bit of colour into there.
That's ultramarine?
Yes, something like ultramarine. Just a nice sort of royal blue colour. And I do have some sort of lines here already that I just might want to pick out. Where's my water brush? There we go. But it's quite a dark, it's quite a dark maroon in here, so I might get on to doing a little bit of that. So it's really going to help the overall tone of this in a moment. Just want to feather that in a bit more. I still haven't gone over that highlight part because it's still quite, there's a little bit of pink through there, but nothing really dramatic. And I don't want to, but I will put a tiny bit of colour right there. I don't want to cover it too much just yet. Can always do that later. Okay, so I'm going to get into stronger wash of magenta. Maybe not that strong. Let's see how strong that is. Oh, it's reasonably strong. But once we give it a bit of a smush, it's amazing that the same wash on the brush, as soon as you kind of smush it out, it doesn't paint very much at all on the paper. Oh, lovely. If you can see, it really creates some really nice lines where there's some are darker than others, where it kind of misses a little bit and things, and I really love that stuff. That makes it look so much more interesting and less flat, and that's what I'm aiming for. It's a bit tricky around little bits, like I was saying, but you can sort of turn the brush over and use just a sort of a couple of hairs on the brush, as it were. I wonder if I want that. I'm going to just slightly quickly, just do a little wash of magenta through the bottom. I mean, it's a bit of a random sort of shapes things that it has there. So I'll just pop that in. You can let that dry. Actually, I might be inclined to just see about dragging it through and up just a bit. And there is a little bit we can do on the top here as well. Still all need to be darker.